Okay, we have a special guest that's going to be speaking next. How long has it been, Steve?
Pretty close to 10 years.
I'm thinking it has been. It's
It's 11 years. Okay.
11 years.
Wow.
My sons and I went to Chicago, and Steve stopped in and listened to us do a presentation, and he's been a client of ours ever since. Steve is an anesthesiologist. He practices in Chicago. He flew out with his family, Sam and Andrea, to be with us, and we're really appreciative of that. He just told me in the back of the room he puts people to sleep for a living. He hopes he doesn't put you to sleep today. So thanks, Steve, for being here.
Thanks. Well, thanks everybody for giving me the chance to tell our story. You know, they say that your life changes by two things that happen to you. One is the people you meet, and the other is the books that you read. So what I want to do today is make this real conversational and kind of make this like a chance where you actually we met. And I got to tell you my story, and maybe what I say doesn't have immediate application for you, but maybe it does spark some interest, maybe some imagination. Someone shared a quote earlier about this product works with logic and imagination. So we're going to talk on both of that a little bit. But I did meet Tom and his family over 10 years ago now. I read the book, I think, Becoming Your Own Banker, one of Nelson Nash's books, and it really resonated with me, the whole idea of building a pool of capital that you can use. I love the idea of a dollar doing more than one thing. So, you know, your dollar you spend for your policy, it gives you the death benefit if you pass earlier, it takes care of your family, but you can also use that same dollar to do something with. And that's really what I like about the name, Life Benefits, focusing on what you can do with the dollars of your insurance policy right now, not just taking care of people that you love when you pass. So I want to tell you about our story today. So I'm an anesthesiologist. I've been doing anesthesia now for about 20-some years. I live in Illinois. And I was reading a book by a guy named Robert Kiyosaki 15, 20 years ago. Maybe you guys have heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant. And I read the book, and he had a couple of things he said there that really just like the light bulb went on for me. He talked about, you know, with your life, with your money and your time, you can acquire liabilities or assets. And he said most people are going to go through their entire lives, they're going to work very, very hard, they're going to pay their bills, and they're going to acquire lots of liabilities, which create no income for you. And he said liabilities take money out of your pocket, assets put money into your pocket. And I was thinking, wow, I'm a physician, you know, I'm making a good income, but our expenses have gone up, our liabilities have gone up, you know, our old cars trying to get through college and residency, they're all falling apart, so you had to buy vehicles that actually ran, you know, you bought your first house, like all these expenses, and I had expenses. I was working harder than ever, and I felt like I didn't have any time. And so then the book came along, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I read that book, and it was like, I got it. I have to start acquiring assets. I need to start acquiring assets. And I like how, Tom, you described this whole life insurance product. It's not to be viewed as an investment. It is an asset that you're building. It's an asset class. And so I love the idea that I have whole life insurance growing as that stable, solid, predictable foundation product. And that's my asset that's solid and stable and predictable. And then I use it to do something pretty creative. And some of my colleagues say I'm very risky, but we started buying real estate. And so it was almost 17 years ago. We bought our first building. It was actually the month that my son Sam was born, so it's been about 17 years ago. And I was trying to figure out what kind of real estate do I want to buy. I'm like, I'm going to buy real estate. I want to do this. I used to be an electrician many years ago, so I'm hands-on. I like to fix things. And I started looking at our paper for houses for sale, apartment buildings for sale. And I thought of the idea, am I going to really feel comfortable going to certain parts of our town and trying to collect rent that maybe is past due? And am I going to be able to like evict somebody, you know, maybe a single mom? Am I going to be able to evict them if they're not paying their rent? I thought, I'm not going to be able to do that. That just doesn't fit who I am. I'm going to hate that process. And so I was trying to figure out what real estate asset class am I going to do? And I stumbled on this building here, and I talked to a person who had homes that they rented out, and they were building a little office building in town. I said, what are you building the office building for? And he said, oh, I had single-family homes, and it was such of a difficult process trying to collect rent and stuff, so I sold all the homes, and I'm building an office building because I want to have business tenants. So because maybe they're more likely to pay their rent. So I thought, well, that makes sense to me. So I'm going to start looking at commercial space. And so this was for sale. It was in the paper. It was a bank-owned former house. It was a very nice big house. An attorney in town bought it. He added it, built onto it, and he couldn't sell it, was trying to sell it, and then he decided to convert it into an office building. So the city gave him something called a special use permit, and he was able to convert his house, which was on a very busy intersection in Rockford, where I'm from. I'm from Rockford, Illinois. It's about an hour and a half outside Chicago. He converted this to special use permit for commercial use. And so what he did is he put his law practice in a couple of these rooms, and then he rented out the other rooms in his house to some of his clients. And so there was about 5 or 6 tenants that were in this building. An engineering firm rented maybe half the building. There was someone that did marketing, someone did engineering. He had his law practice in here. And then this man got into financial trouble, lost the house, and the bank repossessed it. So I bought it from the bank, and I went there one day, and I went in the front door, and I walked through the building, and there was a lady at the front desk, and I said, I heard this is for sale. Do you mind if I just take a quick look around? She said, that's okay. I kind of asked people, like, how do you like renting in here? And they said, well, we love it. We just don't know what's going to happen now because the bank owns it. And so I find out what they were paying for rent. Some of them kind of told me, and I went back home and I wrote out all the numbers, and I added up like these 5 tenants. They were going to pay like $8,000 a month in rent. And then I kind of figured out what my mortgage would be and my utility expense would be, and I thought, wow, I'm like, we could make $1,000 a month profit on this building if we bought this building. So I took my wife out to dinner, and I tried to sell her on the idea, and she thought I was crazy. Like, what experience do you have doing this? And I said, none, but I want to learn, and I think we can do it. And so I got, she got behind me, and then I went to the bank, and I said, hey, I want to buy this building. And the banker said, okay, great. What experience do you have managing commercial real estate? And I said, none. And the bank said, well, Mr. Hryszczuk, thanks for coming by, but there's no way we're going to give you a loan. And so I would go to bank after bank. I would come home from call. I had a 24-hour call. I'd get my suit on, go to the bank. And I think I went to at least 3 or 4 banks, and they all said no. And remember, my wife said, so is this a closed door? And I said, no way. I said, I'm going to go to every bank in town. I mean, Robert Kiyosaki said, you got to keep knocking on doors until you get a loan. So I kept going. And finally, at the end, and then at every bank that I went to, I would think through, okay, why did that banker say no? What were the questions he gave me? And so for the next presentation, I would tweak it a little bit, and I would speak to that objection that I knew the banker was going to have. And so finally, I got to a point where I had a bank that gave me a loan for this building. And we closed on it, and we got our first office building 17 years ago. And what happened was, we didn't realize at the time, but we found a niche. And it's kind of a little commercial real estate niche where what we offer people is, you get a nice building and people rent, let's say, 1 room from us. And that room we convert into like an office space. And then with that office, there's a conference room that we stumbled on. Let's turn the dining room into a conference room. So that was the dining room in this house. And there was a big door going into their living room, and there was another door going to the kitchen. And we turned it into a conference room. I thought, well, maybe people that are here want to have their own conference room at times. So we made that the conference room that you can reserve with a Google Calendar. And then we thought, well, there was a kitchen here. To get from one end of the house to the other end of the house, you had to walk through this kitchen. What are we going to do with the kitchen? So we kind of tore the kitchen out. We put a wall in. We turned that into another office, and there's been a financial advisor in there. There's a counselor in there. There have been different tenants through the years in there. And then this became a little kitchenette, and we thought, these tenants would probably like to have a place to put their food, maybe heat up some coffee, a lunch, a microwave, a little table to sit at. And so we gave them a kitchenette. And then the building had like a big foyer you came into. And I didn't even realize at the time, but you kind of needed places to sit. And so one of my friends who was a tenant said, I got these old chairs. Do you mind if I just throw them in your foyer for a while? I said, that's fine. And we kind of stumbled on the idea that people like to have a waiting area as well. And then there was a sign down on the street, and we realized that these little office tenants like to see their name on a busy street. And all these things, what it did is, all these little things added a lot of value to the small office client. And so we managed this building. We bought it. We fixed it up. I oversaw. We paint. My daughter is painting. We do our own landscaping. We do as much work as we can on our own, and then we hire friends to do other parts of it. And through the years, though, this started off with 5 tenants, and over time, we turned another room that was just an empty room full of boxes. We turned that into an office. We turned a room in the basement that was nothing into an office. He had a great big bathroom on one floor that was empty. We turned that into an office. We now have like 15 tenants in here, and it stays about 100% full. And so for, let's say, anywhere from $400 to $700 a month, one rent, one check, one price covers everything. Covers the utilities, there's internet, you have the conference room, you have the kitchen area, you get a sign on the street. I take care of everything else. So I do the managing for the snow removal, the lawn care. We fix things, the heating, the cooling, all that comes with it for one set price. And we have found out that people love that concept. And so we have a lot of counselors, financial advisors, people that do marketing, people that maybe used to work at companies and they went home for a while, but now they have 3 or 4 kids at home. They just need a quiet office to do their admin work. Maybe they're in pharmaceutical sales. And it turns out through the years, though, we now have acquired about 10 of these buildings. Some are bigger, some are smaller, and they stay about 95 to 100% rented in a city like Rockford, Illinois. And Rockford is a pretty, more depressed, blue-collar kind of town. And so this is really working in our city in Rockford. And so this happened about the time I was learning about assets. I haven't even knew about cash value life insurance yet, but moved the clock forward about 7 or 8 years. Met the McPhees. We started our policy. I started funding it. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it yet, but I understood that concept. I wanted to build some capital. 2012, 13, 14, 2015, my wife and I got called to go to Honduras for a year. We were involved in a missions hospital there, school, orphanage. They needed a teacher and they needed an anesthesiologist. So we went for a year. We lived off the income that this building produced during that year, and we had some people help us with funding. And we came back, and the year before we left, we saw these 2 buildings for sale. They were empty and bank-owned for 5 years. And before we went to Honduras, 2014, I would drive by, and we stopped in, we took a tour, and we went through these buildings, and they were in bad shape. I mean, they were not rented. They were 100% empty. I shouldn't say they had no tenants. This building here had a very nice family of raccoons that was living in the attic here. I didn't know it at the time, but I've learned now how to use your nose in an attic to find out if there's an infestation of, mammals. But these are really bad shape, empty for 5 years, and real estate, if you know, does not like to be empty. Water damage, insect damage, animals, trees growing up in the landscape beds, really bad shape. And so 2014, I looked at those buildings, I thought, if these buildings are still here when we come back from Honduras, I said, we got to buy these. These are going to be our next ones. Year and a half later, we came back from Honduras. They're still for sale. Now the price had come down, and maybe they wanted $200,000 back in 2014. 2 years later, they're still sitting for sale. Some bank on the East Coast owns them. The bank doesn't want these empty buildings. And so I tell my realtor, I said, Mike, let's offer $80,000. He had the contract out. He stopped. He goes, Steve, we can't do that. I said, do it, Mike. I said, the bank doesn't want these empty buildings. The bank hates seeing these things on their books year after year after year. So he put the number down, and of course, I think he just felt embarrassed being a real estate agent. I said, offer it. They just want to get rid of it. And sure enough, this air conditioner, the night before he closed, this air conditioner got stolen. And so we had that to deal with. But we bought the buildings. I think it was about $80,000 we bought these 2 buildings. And that might be a big number for you, or it's a small number for you, but think of it in terms of maybe you have a partner or 2 partners or 3 partners, and you can all go in and do this together. We had a little bit more resources, being in the medical field. So we bought these buildings, and they were in bad shape, and now we had a vision of, I kind of know what tenants want. They want a decent office and a nice-looking space. They want a sign on the road. And so when we bought them, though, 2016, I had no income the year before. And so when you want to buy a building, what does the bank want to see? They want to see, well, let's see what your last year's taxes showed. Well, the year before, I didn't make any money because I was working on the mission field. My wife didn't have an income. And so to get a traditional bank loan for these buildings, banks would have been like, you didn't make any income last year. We're not comfortable funding this. But I didn't have to go to a bank because I had what? I had cash value life insurance built up. And I had this little nest egg. I thought, I'm going to start using this. And so I was able to write a check. We acquired the buildings. And then about the next 6 months, we got to work. We fixed them up. We cleaned them up. We re-sided it. We put a nice sign out front. I put a little bit of brick there on the sides. I thought of things that would create value but kept expenses down. And we fixed up the inside. We redid the parking lot. And these 2 buildings have 4 offices in each building. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're each about 500 square feet. And they have been pretty much 100% filled since 2016. And I'm just going to go over just a couple of the numbers. And what I like about real estate is we make it a family project. So there's my 2 boys. There's Sam and Luke. They're kind of getting the place cleaned out. There's Sarah, I can hire my son and his friends. So they would do jobs for me. We just cleaned it out, gutted it out, got all the junk out. There's my son and my stepdad there. We're putting up a sign. So, I designed a nice sign because people like to see their name on a road. That creates a lot of value for a small tenant who wants to, let the community know that he's there and ready for business. My daughter and her friends, these were railroad ties that were rotted and falling over. And I said, if you guys want a summer job, you can have it. I said, you can build a wall. I want it to be blocks. I want it straight. You do it all. Like, I don't want to be a part of any part. Like, I want you to this is your project. And so these kids figured it out. They cut the bricks by some kind of machine that just like, it was like not electric machine. They can tell they just put themselves into it and broke these bricks. This young man, by the way, he just finished. He's an Army Ranger, just finished his Hell Week this week. And he's married now. Lives in Georgia someplace. But this is, how many years ago is this now? 6, 7 years ago. And so they built this wall, and the credit union across the street was watching the process all summer. And when the kids finished the wall, they all came out and applauded, like they were so happy that the building was looking like coming back to life again. So I like that we can put our kids to work, we put friends to work, building teams to make this happen. And so, that's how I looked when I bought it, pretty rough, but this is where the part of imagination, okay? Maybe your thing isn't commercial office space, but maybe it's an Airbnb. Maybe it's a single family home you can rent and then flip it or rent it out, build it up and rent it out. So you just have to decide, what is it that God's given you that makes you excited about making something shabby look nice again? It's all about that imagination. What imagination can you bring to the marketplace? So there's our nice little sign that I designed, and you get your name on a sign, and we just try to make it look nice for the tenants. So let's go through. So that's like an inside picture. So we repaint it. We kind of use contemporary colors. I got rid of the humming old fluorescent lights that were kind of flickering, put some nice clean track lighting in. You can kind of see the inside was kind of interesting. It was sort of 3-dimensional inside. We'll use French doors, we'll put transoms. Try to, again, use your imagination to create value. Like, why do people go to Starbucks and spend that much money to drink a cup of coffee? They like the atmosphere, right? So use your imagination to create atmosphere for people. So it's not just a cinder block, bland, try to do something with it that makes it look kind of nice. So, add your little touches to it. So you can kind of see color patterns. I try to create nice signs. We get all consistent signs for a directory. Every tenant has a nice professional sign. So just, one price, it just gets it done, and then, we do the management and that kind of thing. So I have teams that clean and take care of it. So that's a project that we did in 2016. And then, so here's some of the numbers. So we buy the building, at that price. We fix up both the buildings, replace the parking lot, re-side it, fix up the inside. I think they need a new furnace. We had to evict the raccoons and take care of all their mess. All that stuff added up. Rehab, total investment right there. There's all my cash value deployed now. I'm pretty much broke. I'm all in here. You heard the saying about diversification is a hedge against ignorance, but if you concentrate, you can build wealth. Well, I was concentrating here because I felt like we've done this before. We did it on the one building. I kind of saw it work. I had about 10 years experience. I had a sense it could work again. This is a little bit of a different neighborhood, a little bit of different style building. It didn't have a kitchenette. It didn't have a conference room. So it didn't have some of those things, but it still had 8 fairly nice looking offices. And I thought, let's see if it's going to work. And this whole time you're doing this, your family and your friends are a part of it. And they're like, Dad, is this really going to work? And well, you don't know. When you start a business, you don't know. The word about businessmen and faith, I'm putting all this out here. I have my life savings here. I have this big empty sign on the road. There's 0 tenants. And let's see what the community does. Are they going to be interested? Well, through about a year or so, we get 8 tenants in there. The 8 tenants are paying rent. I build up a little bit of a rental history. And now I go back to my banker and I say, Mr. Banker, I'd like you to look at my building because I want to do a refinance. And so the banker comes through and he says, very nice. I like what you've done here. This is really good. Even the local alderman said, I like what you've done to this building. You really helped the neighborhood out. Thank you. And the banker looked at all the leases and the rents and said, I think the building's worth, that much money. And I said, great. I said, I want to take out enough to pay off my whole value life insurance, my cash value. I want to put the money back now. And so the money goes back, pays off my cash value. The cash value is back there for the next project. And now I have a traditional mortgage. So these are kind of some basic numbers as best I could remember in 2016. So I think I pulled out that much money, 25-year amortization. I do this for cash flow, so I want to stretch out the payments as long as I can. The government is printing money, inflating money, so I want to pay off my mortgage with cheaper dollars as time goes on. I think back then the rate was around 3.5%. So my monthly mortgage is about $800. My taxes, they were like $500 to $600. Now they've gone up maybe to $800. Utilities for the building, you got to pay the gas, the electric, the water, the sewer, the garbage, maybe $500. You got to mow the yard, you got to push the snow in the Midwest, maybe $500. And then a little bit of reserve fund, things are going to break, the furnace is going to go bad, stuff happens. So let's just say altogether, it's about $3,000 a month this building costs me. An empty building costs me about $3,000. I have 8 tenants. These are my 4 suites in the first building, 4 suites in the next building. Why are some prices higher, lower? Well, a couple of them were in the lower level, didn't have windows. Some were on the upper level, had bigger windows. The higher ceilings, I can get a higher price. But that's what I get for my 8 offices, and that's the monthly cash flow, the monthly income that comes in for these buildings. So you take the money coming in, and you subtract out your expenses, and you have a positive monthly cash flow of $2,500 a month. So this becomes an asset, right? It's putting money into my pocket. So every month, month after month, year after year, this building is generating $2,000 to $3,000 every month coming into my pocket. So times 12 months, that's about a $30,000 income with these 8 tenants. If you paid all cash for the building, let's say you put all your cash in and you didn't believe in a mortgage, you didn't want to have debt or something like that, you would still have a return on your investment about 19%. That would still be a really good investment, wouldn't it? And it's paying down your mortgage as well, so there's still a little bit of extra capital that you're growing, and it's still probably appreciating in value, so you've got some capital gains. So, but just at that basis, you've got a pretty good ROI, but I didn't do that because I like the fact that the bank will actually loan me money for real estate, right? So I'm going to refinance it like I did. I'm going to just leave 20% of my money in the building. The banker's going to give me the other 80%, but do I have to split the 80% with the bank, with my income? No, I get to keep all the income. So the banker gives me money, to pay down the mortgage, and so now the return on investment with what I have into it is really, really strong. I mean, this is just almost seems like unbelievable, but I'm telling you, this is what we're doing with buildings like this in Rockford, Illinois. So it's making about $30,000 a year income. That's really about all I have into it. So just over about a year, I now have all my money back from this building. And so now what is your return on your investment on this property? I mean, it's infinite, right? Because I have no capital left in it. And so, and I've got my cash value back. It's got guaranteed growth. Over the last 7, 8, 9 years, this cash value now has grown a little bit higher. So it's available for the next project. So what do I really like about real estate? Well, I bought 11 years ago, a good friend of mine who's super smart, really like him. He said, you got to buy silver. Silver's just, where it's at. It's a precious metal. We're actually using it. We use it in technology and whatever. So I had some money and I bought a bunch of silver. And today, 11 or 12 years later, it's still not worth what I bought it for. And is there anything I can do to increase the value of that silver? Nothing. I just sit and I wait. It's the most boring, uninspiring investment that I've ever done. I'll never do it again, okay? And I bought some gold, and I think finally, I think the gold is about, if I sold it today, I would break even from where I was, I think, over 10 years ago. So, can I increase the value of stocks? I can't. I put my money in, and I have to just wait and hope that it goes up in value, hope that I picked a good company and a good timing, a good management team, etc. But what I love about real estate is I can do something to increase the value of this property. I can plant a bush. I can put up a new sign. I can paint it. I can add new crisp lighting. I can do something to make this real estate become more valuable. I personally like that because I'm kind of hands-on, and I like the creative side of it. So I love that I can increase the value of my real estate. Whereas paper assets, I just kind of put the money there and I wait and hope it goes up in value. Will a bank loan me money if I want to buy a bunch of stocks? Will a bank loan me money to buy precious metals? None of the banks I know. But will a banker loan me money to buy real estate? Yeah, they will. That maybe not the first bank you go to, but if you keep, figuring out what the next bank wants to hear and you get your story down and you can make yourself look more marketable to a bank will loan you money on real estate. They won't do that for paper assets. Can I be an insider with my Wall Street investments? You can do your research and you can try to think, I think I know what this company is about. I think I get the management team. I think I understand the industry. But a lot of smart people were probably around Enron when Enron imploded. There's still only so much you can know about an investment, and then there's just that unknown. I don't feel like I'm ever going to be really an insider into like the world of paper assets, which is why I'll have to hire somebody like, John to say, best we know, this is a good place to put money. I'm just going to have to go with it and trust. But I like that I tend to invest in my own neighborhood, and nobody knows, your neighborhood better than you do. I know Main Street in Rockford better than Wall Street knows my Main Street, right? So I know the neighborhoods in my town. I know what's happening in my town. I read the paper in my town. I know the talk in my town. I like that I'm like an expert in my town. Okay, a good town, a bad town, wherever your town is, you can drive your streets of your town and be an expert in what's going on in your town, right? Biggest financial expense in all of our lives is going to be taxes. I like that real estate has tax advantages to it. When I buy tools, when I buy landscaping equipment, when I buy a snowblower, like these things that all of us are buying to take care of our homes, I can write off a lot of this stuff as a legitimate business expense because I have real estate, my computer, my internet line, my phone. I need these things to conduct business. So I have a lot of legitimate legal tax, deferred expenses with real estate. And then real estate, the other thing I really like about it, it's a relationally rich world. So not only do I have a lot of close relationships with my contractors, my drywaller, my carpenter, my electrician, my plumber, my landscape people, my painter. I've met so many wonderful people through the years that help me do what we do, in addition to my kids and their friends. But my tenants, like we have a lot of great tenants who I've gotten to know through the years. Some of them, I get to pray for their success. Some of them, we've seen them go through some really hard times. Some of them when COVID hit. I have some single moms that they're into massage or they do facial makeup kind of work and they've been renting from me. They're a good tenant. They've been paying rent on time for 7-8 years. COVID came along and literally our governor shut down businesses because our health department shut things down. Well, I had single moms that they had no income, zero income, and they were devastated. And I was able to say, you know what, just hang in there. I'm not going to evict you. Just stay put. This isn't your doing. We're putting food on our table. It's okay. You just stay put. We're going to get through this together. And they would cry on the other line. And I like that I could be a little part of their success as a business owner because, I owned the building. So I feel like it's a relationally rich way to grow an asset. It's not just a paper asset, which there's benefit there too. And, relationships also can be challenging relationships where people complain about every little thing, as you can imagine. Like the accountant said, if you manage real estate, it can be challenging at times. I'm surprised I haven't gotten a call today because almost always when we leave town, there's always something that breaks or some basement gets wet or something happens, and that hasn't happened yet. And then, of course, the beautiful thing about real estate, I don't buy this stuff just to hope it's going to go up in value someday. It may go up in value. It may not. Personally, I don't really care. I mean, of course I care. I want it to, but I don't need it to. If my properties never go up in value, I didn't build these things and buy them and fix them up to sell them. I built them up and fill them up because I want the cash flow. So every single month, I like about towards the end of the month, the beginning of the month, all of a sudden my mailbox starts to fill up with checks, right? Or nowadays it's a lot of online checks. So my Cash App, my Apple Pay, however tenants want to pay me, these things start to flood in at this time of the month. And so cash flow is really tremendous, with real estate. So that's the main things I have for you. I had a couple Q&A things I just wanted to go through and see if anyone wanted me to talk more about those things. So the unique value that we create with this little niche, for one price, you get an office with some of the amenities, the little conference room, a kitchenette area, a waiting area, a nice sign. These are things tenants want to see. How do you know if a building's going to work in your town if you're into this? It's got to be priced right. It's got to be in a certain part of town that people want to go to. Did you have a question? Yeah.
For the office space, do you rent out the conference room?
So the conference room right now, the way we do it is there's no cost for it. I just have a Google Calendar, and let's say you rent an office from me. Let's say you're a financial advisor, you want an office. With your $500 a month rent, you can use the conference room as much as you want. If you have a meeting, you just reserve it on Google Calendar.
So it's more along the lines of part of the whole entire package.
It just comes with it. It's just a value add. And so one thing I really have to clarify, if any of you that have rented office space before, you know that commercial office space is leased by the square foot per year. So oftentimes the first question I get is, what's your rate? What's your rate? And I have to tell them I don't do it that way. I don't have a per rate, per square foot, per year, which is how commercial office space is. I have a one price for this package. And I say, and these are the amenities that come with it. And I might have to tell them, it'd be equivalent to, let's say, $13, $14 per square foot, plus your triple net, plus your utilities, all added in. If you add all that in, that's what it would come out to. But I try to make sure you compare apples to apples, because where you're renting down the street, let's say $14 triple net, are you going to get a waiting room? Are you going to get a conference room? Are you going to get a kitchen area? And a lot of my tenants say, no, I'd have to rent all that. And I don't want to buy office furniture and waiting room furniture and kitchenette furniture. I like, Steve, that you have all that there. And all I have to do is bring my desk in or my couch from a counselor, and I'm in business. So it really creates a lot of value. But this is the creative thing that I feel like God gave us as we just sort of stumbled on this and kind of figured out what to do when we were figuring things out with that first big white building. Any other questions? Otherwise, I have a few other ones. So a couple other questions I think you must be asking. So can anybody do this? Well, I like to watch cooking shows when I'm at the hospital at night on call. Michelle, you have a gift for cooking, I know, because I always read your thing and you love to cook. But I think we all have an inherent capacity to want to create. I think that comes from the Creator, right? And God doesn't just make things, but God takes care of things He makes. But for Him to take care of things, He uses us. He uses us to take care of His creation. And all of us have been given an aptitude to create in different ways, whether it's creating a meal. I like to create office space that looks cool. Someone else wants to be creative with financially, arranging your finances in a way that makes sense and grows. So we all have a different capacity to create things. You just have to find your niche, and then you funnel it through the imagination, and that's how you can serve people. How do I find tenants? I put a big sign up by the building, might say office space for lease, starting at $400 a month. My phone number, I use officespace.com, a little local place. I use this thing called LoopNet, which is a big national. I put it on Craigslist. I get calls from all these places. That's how I find my tenants, in word of mouth. How I find tenants. Are we okay on the 6 minutes? Yeah. A couple other questions. I just know, how do you collect rent? Probably if you're over 50, tenants write out a check and put it in the mail in an envelope, and I get it the old way, and that's perfect. All the younger tenants, if you're in your 20s and 30s, they're all doing Cash App or Apple Pay, which is really easy for me because I just accept it on my phone and it's done. So that's how I collect rent. If rent's not due by probably day 10, most of my tenants, I've never done a credit check on any of my tenants. I meet people or I talk to them on the phone, and I get a pretty good sense if you've got a legitimate business model. By day 10, if I don't see a rent check, I'll give you an email. Hey, Bob, we don't have a record of your rent being received yet. Can you please let me know? And almost always it's, we switched banks. We meant to get that out. We went on vacation. It's always an oversight. I do have a little late policy in the lease. After day 5, there's a $50 late fee. I almost never charge tenants for that because almost always it's some little oversight, and I'll tell them, look, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And people don't abuse it. If I get someone that takes advantage where I can tell there's multiple late, I'll put in the late fee there just because, you have to have consequences for life. Do you have to be a handyman to be good at this? You don't, because, you build a team. So like, I don't like to do bookkeeping. And so I have a bookkeeper. Like I just I don't like it. It's not creative for me. It's not what I've been given, to do. So I have a bookkeeper and accountant. I like being hands-on. I love to have a shovel. I love to dig and get my hands dirty. But you don't have to be a handy person. You can just know people who are and then hire people to help you put together, to do the things that make it look nice.
How do you find the buildings?
So how do you find buildings? That's a great question. Drive around, and when you drive around your town, I invest in my town. So when you drive around, make yourself drive different streets and just look. Keep your eyes open. Look for sale signs. Look for sale by owner. Look at the local newspaper. Go to realtor.com. Look online. Just look. Just keep looking for things for sale. Listen for things. Sometimes someone might tell you, hey, I know a guy that's going to be selling something. Maybe it's not even on the market yet. But most things I've seen, I drive by and I see a sign. And then I call. And then I try to do I drive around it and look at it and get a feel of this is something I want to pursue further.
Do you check every place that's like around it, like the areas, the houses, all of that?
A little bit. I'll drive through and look around and just get a feeling if this feels like an area that I want to invest in. So just driving around, maybe sitting in the parking lot, sit across the street. So you do what you can to try to figure out the area is a good area. But if it's an area that if it's your town, pretty much right away if it's an area that you want to invest in or not.
I was just going to add to that. I know like with another property that we have, you had to do a little research because sometimes there's not a for sale sign at the property, but you would just look into who owns it through tax records and then contact them. Sometimes there's out of town owners, so then you could contact them. And a lot of times they're really anxious to get rid of it when they're out of town. So you just see something that's just kind of going to pot, something that's not getting, shoveled, not getting mowed properly. It's just being not taken care of. That's a good hint that it's usually an out of town ownership, an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. What's in the lease? Probably a question. It's kind of there's a lot of stuff in the lease, so I can send you a lease example if you want to see that. But last couple of minutes, do you have another question? Yeah.
Who does the cleaning and who pays?
Yeah, so I have a cleaning lady. I have the same lady who's been cleaning all my buildings for 15 years, and she sends me an invoice once a month, and I have this handy little app on my bank. I hated writing checks and stuffing envelopes. I used to do that for the first few years, and then a friend of mine said, I do online bill pay. And I was like, what's that? And this is, when it was just coming out, and now I pay every bill I can on my phone. It's almost fun. You just I can do it while I'm waiting for an elevator. Someone will send me an invoice. I get my email. Sean sent me an invoice for, fixing the thermostat or the put a new toilet in. I just, here's the amount, hit pay. I send the invoice to my bookkeeper, delete the email. There's the elevator. I go on with my day. I do it en route. And it's just so efficient. I love online bill pay. It makes it really doable. People say, how do you manage your 10 buildings? It's like, I do. But I feel like I just have an efficient way of doing things. So it's not real. I don't feel it's real burdensome at all. And I have good tenants. I'm a picky landlord.
You're an anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
So do you continue doing that full time?
Yeah.
Or that? Oh, okay. Because
Yeah.
I was going to ask if that helped kind of free up your time working at the
There
hospital.
have been periods where I've gone, and I do, I let go of some of the calls. So instead of maybe having, one call a month, I do a call every other month. So this does help me not work quite as much as I used to. So it's freed up a little bit more time. Yeah. Any other questions?
Okay,
All right,
so I
thank you very
think
much.
we're good on questions. I just have to say, I love the way that you created value there for your tenants. So not only do they have their space, now they also get a waiting room. They also get a conference room. You just upgraded it, and you said it was about 100% rented most of the time. No wonder. Who would want to leave such a great space? And you have built value using your own value that you have been able to accumulate. And how did the outside of those buildings look? He created value for Rockford, Illinois. Anyone who drives past there, anyone who gets to utilize those businesses have such a great feel. So that is awesome.
Thank you very much. We've enjoyed it.
There is one other thing that I asked him to share. 2020 was a rough year on everyone. Would you all agree? The Hryszczuk family had something else that happened in 2020 that was very rough, but turned out to be an amazing. Did you like how we said turn it into an opportunity? I like that word. Would you share with us just a little bit?
So yeah, 2020, our house burned to the ground, and we didn't lose anybody in our family, which is great. We didn't even lose a pet, maybe some fish, but other than that, we got out, which was tremendous. And God took care of us totally, though. We had such support while our house was burning down. We had old neighbors calling and saying, "Hey, we've had a house for sale. We hasn't been able to sell it for a while. It's even furnished. Why don't you guys move in it tonight and we'll figure it out?" Well, we lived there for the next, 8 or 9 months. And we have 2 big Bernese mountain dogs, and the dogs got to come with. So we were very taken care of. Our church family took care of us. We had a meal showing up every other day for 3 months. It was very overwhelming, but it was just the power of just the local church just loved on us, and we were so taken care of. And a year and a half later, we moved into a new home. We built back on our old lot because we weren't quite ready to leave our neighbors yet. And we've been back there now since last October, and we get to live in a very nice home now. Yeah. So. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, you bet.
Get it.
Okay.